Today's episode of Running It Back is ready, locked, loaded, and I'm excited about this one. Took a quick break from the pod, but it is back this week, and I'm glad it is. So definitely going to enjoy this one and give it a listen. But first, what's going on with me, Patrick Ramirez? What are you doing? What do you do? What are you up to, man? How do you spend your day? Well, as the dust settles, stand-up is back. I would say it's coming back. It's back more so for some people. It's coming back for others. So it is back, and for me, that means live. I am live. Friday, July 16th, 7:30 live, right here on the West Coast at Flappers Comedy Club. That's in Burbank, a club I have worked quite a bit and haven't been to in a long time because of this last year. So I am back on a full-fledged show on a Friday, the 16th, 7:30. FlappersComedy.com is where you go to check it out. So come see me do live stand-up comedy as well as other people too. And I've done a few little shows already, and they've been great. If you've been to shows already, you know. If you haven't, this is a great chance to come out and see a live show. And as I always say, there's a parking garage. You drive in, you find a spot, you walk in. There's no battle. You don't have to battle for parking. You don't have to find a meter. You don't have to find change. You just park. People forget the stress relief that is finding a parking spot, and you can do it here. So, 7:30, FlappersComedy.com, July 16th. Come out, everybody. Today on the show, Ryan Stout joins me. Ryan Stout is a veteran comedian. He has been on numerous late-night TV, stuff like Conan, stuff like Chelsea Lately he has been on. He has comedy albums up online. He's a vet. He lends his insight. He gives me perspective. He gives me insight into his creative process. And of course, we go deep into his motivations. That's how it always ends up going here, is I want to know where these people are coming from. All that being said, guess what? Me and Ryan grew up in the very same hometown. We're both from El Paso, Texas. Our paths never crossed growing up, yet that's how I know him. He's from my same hometown, and he is living and working in the same profession as me. So Ryan Stout joins the show today, and we go deep, as we always do. Topping off with the patented Rotten Tomatoes head-to-head game. Will Ryan compete for the championship? Will he fall behind? Will he be somewhere in the middle of the pack? Listen all the way through. Find out. You're going to like it. We go places. The pod is back. Right now, Running It Back with me and Ryan Stout. Enjoy. Join me today. He has been on late night TV. He's been a panelist on Chelsea Handler's Late Show. He has a comedy special called Man in the Suit. Ryan Stout joins me on the screen today. Hey, Ryan, how's it going?
Hi, Patrick. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks so much for joining me and doing this. I forgot one thing, though, in your intro. Fellow El Pasoan, we are from the same hometown.
Yeah, we grew up. Well, I grew up in El Paso. I was born in Cleveland, but age 4 through 17, I was in El Paso.
Those are pretty formative years. I would call you an El Paso resident.
I would say it was. That's where I grew up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say you're an El Paso resident? How do you break it down?
Yeah, I tell people that I grew up in El Paso.
Yeah.
but some people are like, you weren't born in El Paso. And I'm like, I didn't know that was a credential I needed to have.
Some people are real sticklers for the birth thing.
Well, I can understand with a city like New York.
Yeah.
Were you born here? Were you born in New York and then you grew up in New York? Are you a real New Yorker? But El Paso, you're like, all right, come on. Listen, we all went to the Diablos game when we were 7. Listen, it's fine. There aren't a lot of markers here.
We went to the Diablos game. We went to SummerSlam. We went to Wet and Wild on a field trip.
Yeah.
Those are the prerequisites for El Paso. We all listen to the same 3 radio stations.
My wife and I were in Whole Foods the other night, just grocery shopping, and then over the speakers came the song "The Heat Is On," and like,
wow, you were bringing back a memory for me.
And we both like reacted to it, and I was like, "Well, why are you reacting to this?" And she was like, "Why are you reacting to this?" And she said, "Do you know this song?" I said, "Of course I know this song. How do you know this song?" And she was like, "Because the Miami Heat played this song all the time." And I went, "Oh, well, the El Paso Diablos, I think, probably had it first." So,
wait, so it's possible for 2 different cities to share the same song for promotional?
Same song events? for sports teams, but of all the songs in the world, I mean, such a rare one.
Right. I tell people when they ask me, what's it like growing in El Paso? What did you guys do and stuff? I was like, let me just tell you this. It's like if classic rock had a convention center. That's what El Paso is. We love classic rock there. I didn't know Eddie Money was not the biggest rock star in the world till I was about 23 years old.
Yeah. My first concert was the Romantics.
Really? In El Paso? Where was this concert?
I don't remember. It was outdoors. I remember that. And I think there were probably multiple other people on the bill, but yeah, I was very young. It's very blurry to me. I just remember, people always ask, what was your first concert? And I always go, it was the Romantics.
Pretty good first concert though.
But feeds into your theory that it's a classic rock town.
I always felt so. I think the Southwest in general, I grew up all over the Southwest, and the Southwest in general, I think, is very classic rock centric. It's a lot of stations. Like, you don't grow up in the Southwest without knowing 3 Fleetwood Mac songs off the top of your head, Scorpions, AC/DC, songs like that. And then some deeper cuts as well, like Quiet Riot, things like that. It's just in your lexicon of music brain.
Yeah, it really just seemed to be around. There didn't seem to be very much, there didn't seem to be any real hip hop culture in El Paso, really. There didn't seem to be a whole lot of country western. People would assume like El Paso, Texas, like it would be country fans everywhere, but it wasn't. I mean, there were some, I'm sure, but it wasn't a hub for any of those things, really.
Yeah, it is an interesting town. You're right. I never had any hip hop experience. It was never my interest in music. The country thing I would experience very little of. Like you said, I knew it was out there.
Yeah.
But it was pockets of it. And you wouldn't think that because El Paso is a Texas town. It's a desert town. But every once in a while, I went to a Catholic school and we had to wear uniforms. So every once in a while we got free dress, and on free dress, you would get to see what that kid was really like. And there was one kid that would come in free dress and he was a cowboy, and you would be like, dude, you're a cowboy.
You're a full-on cowboy, like hat and boots and belt.
He would go with the Western shirt, the jeans, and then he had sort of a Western belt as well. I remember him. All 4 years, it'd be like, whoa, you're a cowboy outside of school.
Wow. Yeah. I went to a private school, kindergarten through 2nd grade. And when we were able to wear whatever we want. Like, I think we had free dress like once a month, maybe. And I remember specifically, thinking as a child that it's like a really big deal to get to wear jeans.
Yes.
Like,
that's true.
That was just unheard of unless you were given permission. Otherwise, you were uniformed up.
I totally could see that because I was uniforms all the way through high school. So jeans was a privilege. Jeans was like you were breaking the law in some degree. So when public school kids were like, what do you wear to school? Oh, my jeans and t-shirt every day.
All the time.
All the time. What do you do in the wintertime? Wear your jeans.
And those are the kids that have it together. The kids who don't have it together are wearing like pajama pants with rockets on them and, some sort of costume, the upper half of a costume from Halloween, but as a shirt.
It was a different time.
Yeah, I went to public school 3rd grade through graduating high school. And that transition from private school to public school was crazy, because when you don't
Oh,
know anything
really? That's
else,
interesting. You went private school to public. What age did you do that?
I was third grade, so probably what, almost 8 years old.
Hmm.
And when that happened, your parents drop you off at school on that first day of school, and you learn kind of what the ropes are, and you learn what to expect as far as like how classes work, and how the school operates. But then when you learn those things in private school, where there's like a regimen, and then you go to public school and they drop you off, it's literally, I've described it as like Bernie Madoff being put into Gen Pop. Like when he's in Gen Pop at the prison looking around like, what is this? Because like my school, we didn't have a cafeteria. We had a dining hall. And like everybody would come into the dining hall, stand by their chair, and then the principal would walk in and lead the school in a prayer, and then say, you may
Right.
be seated. And we would all sit down. And then I went to lunch my first day of like public school, and it's in the gym, and there are like folded tables that are folded down, and there's just kids running around everywhere. There's a kid digging something out of the trash. There's kids over the vending machines. There's like, some kids have lunches. Some kids are waiting in line for lunch, and it's just pandemonium. And when you're 7 or 8 years old and you go home and your parents are like, how was school? Like you don't have the words to be like, what the fuck is going on? uh, you had me at this place that had like rules and things, and now I'm with animals. Like they just do whatever they want. And so that was, I wasn't until I was in my 30s, like talking to a therapist, where I actually like came upon how traumatic that was for me as a child, because it was just so alienating and so lonely. And you question your whole, like, what do I really know about what the hell's going on?
You did this at third grade level. You were questioning, how do I know what's going on? It seems very advanced.
Well, I mean, kids fall into routines. And when your routine is like, okay, I'm in a classroom with 10 to 15 other private school kids. And on Mondays, we go to the library. And on Tuesdays, we go to the computer lab. And on, we go to music class on Thursdays. And you have like a regimen. And then you get to public school and you're like, all right, class, we're going to go to the library twice this semester, if you're good. And I remember sitting in class, like my first day of third grade, and I'm looking at the teacher while she's teaching. And then I'm looking at other kids who are just talking. And I was like, Jesus, they're not fucking paying attention to the teacher at all. They're really going to be in trouble. And then they weren't. They just continued to talk. And I was like, okay, all right.
This is the way the game is played here.
Yeah, I don't understand anything that's going on. I remember like we got our textbooks, and then the teacher was like telling people to put covers on their textbooks. Do you remember that?
Right,
like
book covers.
Yeah,
that was
paper
a big
covers
deal.
and like doing the origami, like folding it over the cover of the book.
You got to see whose parents were more involved in the kid's life, because who would buy their kids book covers, who would make book covers out of grocery bags.
Right.
You got to see whose parents were more involved come the next day.
What was interesting to me was they handed out book covers, like oversized sheets of paper, and these kids just knew how to put them on the books. And I'm sitting there going, why do we have to cover up the books? They already have covers. Like,
that's a good question. Why were we covering those books?
What is the intention? Well, it's because the kids were animals and they would destroy the books. They would spill shit on them. They would tear up the covers. It would be, the school would be losing mass amounts of books. And so like, I remember all these kids, not only did they know like the special origami to like put the book cover on, but they just did it diligently. And I didn't know how to do it. And I just kind of hid all of my books in my bag, and I took all of my covers home. And my parents were like, what is all of this? I'm like, we're supposed to cover the books. And they're like, cover them. I said, yeah. They're like, well, how do you know which book is which? I said, I think we have to like write it on the outside or something, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. That was an early rite of passage for students, was covering their books and then labeling their books.
Yeah.
Do you remember this? Do you remember having to write your name on the inside cover of the book for your year? and then you got to see who had the book before you, what student had the book, and you got to write. I would write like Patrick Ramirez, 1992, and then you got to see who was 91, 90, 89. That was kind of a fun thing to do too.
My schools did not. They were very strict about just don't write in the book. And what about this front part here where it's telling us to write? Don't write in the book.
Ignore that. That's
Other people have written in the book. Yeah, they weren't supposed to. Don't write in the book.
You don't see them around, do you?
Yeah, they're gone.
Did you ever figure out why your parents went from private school to public school? Why the change? It sounds traumatic. Why did they do that?
Well, I think it was the cost. And I also think it was just a matter of the private school. I mean, it was kind of a drive to get there. And then, I mean, there was a public school 2 blocks from my house. And I think when I was, initially put in private school, it was because of my age. Public school wouldn't take me for kindergarten because I wasn't 5 yet, but I was going to turn 5 like 29 days later. And public school wouldn't allow it, but private schools would allow it. So once I got in and did a few years, then public school was like, all right, well, I guess if he's already in 3rd grade, we'll just take him for 3rd grade. And so I was a lot younger than all the other kids.
Oh, you were the young kid in school. You were the youngest on the age side. What kind of kid were you? Were you a studious kid?
It was terrified.
You were a terrified kid.
What the hell was going on? Yeah. It was weird because I couldn't have imagined that, like, I show up to the school and all the kids already know each other. Totally makes sense, right?
Right.
But I wasn't expecting that as a 7-year-old, that I would be the odd one out. So it was difficult because you're trying to make friends, but everybody already has friends. And you're like, okay, all right. But I wasn't the only new kid. So you just find the other new kids and it's fine.
As a little kid, what were your interests? Were you a sports guy? Were you movies guy? Were you music? What kind of kid were you, Ryan?
I did play a lot of sports. I don't know if I was particularly great at any of them, but I wasn't bad at any of them. And then I really, at like 8 years old, started watching a lot of stand-up comedy.
8 years old, huh? Early.
Yeah. So A&E's Evening at the Improv, I would stay up and watch, whatever was on late night television. It was real, in those days you had the TV guide. And it would tell you.
People used to collect TV guides.
Yeah.
It would have a stack. But it would tell you
the Tonight Show is on, but it wouldn't tell you like who the guests are. And, I don't even think if they told me who the guests were, I would know because I was a child. And then I didn't know if there would be a comedian or not. Because it's just like on the show, Joe Blow. I was like, all right, is he a comedian or is he? So there were a lot of times that I would end up watching a late night show all the way to the end. And then they would introduce a band and I'd be like, all right, we're done here. Just disappointed flat out. Yeah.
Those days in TV were like a jungle. You just, whatever you got, you got. We didn't have access to information like we do now. We just watched.
Whatever you got, you got. Yeah. And so if you wanted to see stand-up comedy, sometimes the TV guide said stand-up comedy and you would turn it on and it would be the same Paula Poundstone special you had already seen 12 times.
Yeah.
But you could either watch that or not.
Right.
So yeah, I ended up watching a lot of comedy specials on repeat.
So
I was fine with that.
You were interested in the medium from an early age, 8 years old. Who were those, like some of those early impacts? Who did you see as a kid that fascinated you?
So one thing that I thought was interesting was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I was performing at the Funny Bone in St. Louis. And I got off stage and I walked to the back and the booker's sitting there and he's just kind of like shaking his head at me. And he's known me for a decade at this point, but he's just shaking his head at me. And then he goes, "Did you watch a lot of Larry Miller as a kid or something?"
Oh, really? Larry Miller.
I did.
I see that influence now that you mention it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah. And by the way, for him to like pick that out of the blue, I was just astounded.
Hmm.
But oddly enough, like when I was very young, my parents also didn't let me just watch anything. So some of the HBO specials like Carlin, those were not, I was not allowed to watch those.
Yeah.
But if it was on during the day, something like Rita Rudner, I could absolutely watch Born to Be Mild, and
Mhm.
it's family friendly and it's stand up. So Rita Rudner, Paula Poundstone. I was allowed to watch the A List with Sandra Bernhard. She would
Mm.
host, and it was just like a showcase show on VH1. Um, but I had some Cosby tapes eventually, and then
Yeah.
that branched out into some once I figured out that I could just like go to the record store, go to the tape store, get CDs.
Hmm.
I had a large collection of comedy albums by the time I was 14, 15 years old.
Ah, yeah. That would those early teenage years is might have been when I first discovered what stand-up comedy was. And I had favorites and stuff, but there were comedians that just confused slash fascinated me. I was fascinated by Maria Bamford. I didn't know what exactly I was looking at. I knew it was funny. I knew this was a unique thing. Another one was Mitch Fatel. I was like, what is this guy? This guy is
Yeah,
operating in another universe. And I just
yeah,
couldn't get enough because I was just immensely curious about it. And I would just consume it. Like you said, whatever was on, I watched whatever Comedy Central 15-minute little clips were on. I just would consume
yeah,
it all. And then I would have my little favorites. And then when they would replay, I'd be like, oh, I know this guy. Oh, this girl's got this one bit. I hope she does it again. So it
right.
was, yeah, it just sort of like you suck it up like a sponge. And then whatever stays in, stays in. So,
Hmm.
but you mentioned your parents wouldn't let you watch like Carlin and stuff. Did you have strict parents?
Somewhat. I mean, they were
How so?
I was not allowed, there's no swearing allowed in my house. There's no profanity allowed.
You were the no swearing
You know,
house, huh? I think I might have been a similar house.
yeah. I remember like I brought my report card home one time and I showed it to my dad, and I had all A's except for like one subject. I had a B, and he didn't pause. He just went, "What's that B?" And it was just made clear to me like that's unacceptable.
Really?
Um, so
What subject was that in, Ryan?
don't remember. I don't remember, but it never happened again. Uh, and then yeah, it just seemed like even as a kid, my bedtime was 9 o'clock, and A&E's Evening at the Improv would come on, I believe, on Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock. And what I figured out was if I just kept quiet, quietly watched the show, and then at 10 changed it to the 10 o'clock news and gave my dad the remote and just like walked to my bedroom, like as long as I didn't like make a big deal of anything, I could stay up and watch the show.
Mm.
And that was the only night I was really doing it. But every once in a while, they'd be like, "What are you still doing up?" And I'd be like, "I was gonna watch Evening at the Improv. If that's all right."
I think I might have been a similar kid. I was never a troublemaker. I wasn't like a loud kid. I wasn't a fighter kid, but I was a sneaky kid. I always
Mm,
wanted to sneak stuff. I always wanted to sneak candy into class. I wanted to find a way to sneak TV into my room because I couldn't have a TV in my room. So
mm,
yeah, because I wanted to watch another show that fascinated me was the Ellen Show when she had a sitcom. I loved
sure.
that show, and I would hide the TV behind books. And then when the time was right, I would just separate the books so I could see the screen from my desk, so I could watch
Uh-huh.
TV with the sound off. And that was
Yeah.
my little scam of how to sneak
Right.
TV. And then, like you said, with the
Right.
remote, you would watch the show you wanted to watch, and then when your parents would come in, you had to time it so you had a family friendly channel on the flip button. So you could hit it
Uh-huh.
real quick. It could go to a friendly channel. You were all good. And then when they left the room, hit it again and then back to what you were watching. So you had all these
Yeah.
little tricks for watching. That's the kind of kid I was in. I was just little sneaky scams. I was like into little Pat Ramirez heists at an eighth grade level.
I Yeah, I was not allowed to have a TV in my room, but eventually I think once my little brother and I were both like up and walking around, because we have a 5 year age difference, but once he was 5 and I was 10, I think my mom was like, all right, I can't be chasing both of them around. So let's get an extra TV. let's give this kid a Nintendo, and
Yeah.
just sit down, please. Uh, but until that moment, I wasn't allowed to have a TV in my room. I remember when I wanted to have a phone in my room, and they're like, "No, you
Mm.
don't need a phone." Uh, and
That
then
was
when
a
I,
harder sell for me because no one ever called me. So I,
yeah,
I never could have the argument. Like, can I have a phone? What for?
yeah,
Never mind.
yeah, I don't need it.
Forget it.
I eventually did get a phone in my room, but unlike friends of mine who had their own like phone line, I didn't have my own phone line.
That was
So
always,
I would
yeah,
tie up the
impressive me.
phone
I was
line.
like, you
Yeah,
have your own phone line? Is this, who
yeah,
knows about this? How'd you
right.
sneak this? He's like, no, my mom got it for me. How?
Yeah, why?
Why? Yeah,
Uh,
why? How, who else? Who calls you? It's beyond
so
me.
it
Yeah.
did seem like I spent a lot of my childhood just kind of I don't know, asking for permission for things.
Hmm. Did
And
you have a
I
curfew?
would get it sometimes. I didn't really I I mean, yes and no. It changed over the years, I'm sure. I mean, the curfew early on was no, you can't go out. It's dark out there.
Right.
uh and then I mean, I was old enough to leave and they're like, "All right, be back by 10." And
Hmm.
then, this idea of, kids who their parents didn't know where they were and didn't know when they were coming back. I was like, all right, I don't know how your parents let you live that lifestyle, but okay, you're very lucky.
Yeah. We grew up in very similar houses. I remember having to call home every hour
Mm,
and giving the check-in. And then when cell phones came around, my dad had a cell phone and he would just give it out. It's like, take the phone with you.
right.
And you call me when you're coming home. Call
Yeah.
me when this. Yeah, you would just take his phone around with him and you would call it. Yeah, it was nonstop checking in at my house.
What year did you graduate high school?
99.
99. Okay. So I was 2000. I just didn't even know if we were like
We're similar ages. Yeah.
yeah, I didn't know if there was a gap there, but when you talked about like watching the Ellen show, I immediately went, all right, that was like the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
But you were telling the story and I thought you were like a kid. Like a 7-year-old. And I was like, was he 7 in the mid 90s? How old is
No,
Patrick?
I'm older.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh yeah, I watched pretty much any sitcom that had a stand-up comic as the lead, but
Ah.
generally wasn't interested in sitcom, did not like sketch, didn't like didn't like really anything that wasn't stand-up. Even movies, I was like, okay, yes, Blazing Saddles is very funny, great.
Hmm.
But I wasn't interested in like watching it again and again and trying to figure out, uh, scene structure or anything like that. It was like, all right, I watched it. It was funny. Great.
You were that focused or that interested in stand up alone? Was that always, as you became interested in comedy and stuff, was that always the goal? Just stand up comedy?
Yeah, I mean, that was unfortunately always the goal. um, the, I think there was an element of control there in that, you shoot a movie, you have to get actors, you have to get cameras, you have to get light.
Mhm.
There's all these things you have to do. But if you want to do stand up, you just put some ideas down on paper, figure out what you want to say, and then get up and say it.
Yeah,
And I
it
was like,
is
oh, I
definitely the
can do
least
that. Yeah.
production involved. You go, you stand, and you speak, and you are doing it.
Yeah. The unfortunate part is that when you're doing it, you don't need anybody else. And because you don't need anybody else, nobody has any reason to help you because they can't really make any money off of you because
Mhm.
there's really no money in stand-up comedy. Like the idea that if you're a really funny actor, you're Will Ferrell, your agent gets a phone call saying, hey, we want to put Will in a movie. It's $20 million. All
Mhm.
right, great. But for a stand-up comic to make $20 million, like you have to go on like a serious arena tour. And it's a lot harder.
Yeah, definitely. You were talking to me about this once, the breakdown of how it is and how it sort of where the rubber meets the road. So when you started stand up, how much information do you think you had and how long do you really got a bird's eye view of the business and what the goal is to pursue?
Um, so when I started, because I was so young and had kind of figured out that I liked it and was interested in it, it started at a very pure place. It was just curiosity. And so I went to like the library and tried to see if there were books about stand-up comedy. I literally put forth effort to gather information, and I didn't find very much.
Mhm.
So, at that point, the only way to figure it out is to start doing it. And then you meet other comics and they tell you things. And, even then, you're kind of like, I was in San Francisco at the time, just trying to like climb up the ladder there. So you're pretty focused on just what's happening in San Francisco. But then once you leave wherever you start and you move to a bigger market and you realize like, oh, there's all these like managers and agents and there's television and there's film and like they all want you to do something that's not stand up so they can make a lot of money very easily.
That's always
So it taught,
my joke is when someone says like, "Oh, how do you do a lot of stand up?" It's the only business where you say like, "You want to do stand up? Well, go do something else, and then you can do stand up."
yeah.
That's the weird route that it takes. Is the traditional club system is an old model now.
Well, and it's a model that never really worked. Like the weird thing is that Americans they truly believe that if you're funny, then the crowd will like you and then they will leave and they will tell their friends and relatives. And then those people will come to see you. And then those people will go tell more people. Like if you're really funny, that's what will happen. And you go, really? Who did that happen for? Because I can name maybe 3 people in the history of comedy that's happened for.
Mhm.
Everybody else got famous from doing something that wasn't stand up. And then you all rushed in to see them. But audiences somehow, people don't believe that. They really want to cling to this idea that no, that's not how it works. So I do think it's really funny. It's almost like if you grow up loving sneakers and you really love tennis shoes and you're like, oh, I'm going to design tennis shoes. I'm going to make the best tennis shoe out there. And you get the best materials and you figure out how to sew and you figure out like all the, best things that a sneaker can be. And then they're like, no, but Michael Jordan, we're buying his sneakers.
Yeah.
And you're like, but he doesn't know how to make sneakers. No, that's not the point. He's famous and we like him.
Yeah.
Oh, but I like sneakers. Yeah, we don't give a shit about sneakers.
We don't even wear sneakers. You know what?
We want a name brand from somebody we like. That's what we want.
Yeah.
And that's the stand-up's the same way. People don't want to go see good stand-up. They want to go see somebody who they already like and then, continue to like them.
Yeah. You're so right. We did it the previous generation where actors and stuff would do stand up and we would say like, oh, they're just going to see him because that person's on television. Now fast forward to like, oh, they're just going to see them because that's a popular TikTok video person. That's a popular YouTube. It's like, well, did they do stand up? No, I don't know. But people are going to see him. I always say like, you think Tom Arnold is funny? But people go see him and I'm sure it's a fun price of admission, but he is not a traditional stand up, but from the club's sake, they have to fill a room. So it's just sort of a push and pull that may never get solved, may never end. It's just the nature of this weird, unusual beast of trying to fill a room.
And I think it went sideways partially because of, that very same idea that the audience wasn't really upholding their end of the bargain, that they thought the bargain was that they were like, well, if you're funny, then I'll tell other people about you. But then the audience didn't do that. They didn't do it for anybody. And then the comedy club owners went, well, we don't know how to fill the room. So we just have to book people who are popular and then audiences come to see them. So it like spiraled out in this weird way where the clubs, in order to stay alive, had to either take the hard road of let me teach my local community that if they come here, we're going to have great comedians. And it's going to be people they've never heard of, but they're going to have a good time most of the time. Every once in a while, there's probably going to be an artist that you don't like, but that doesn't mean it's a bad artist. It means that's your personal taste. And so they really like teach that. Like Louis Lee at Acme Comedy Company in Minneapolis, he really set out to teach the local audiences that. And because he was successful, he doesn't need to book anybody who's popular. He doesn't have to pay somebody $35,000 for the weekend to fill up his room. He can fill up his room. And so his business model, he had to put a lot of time and effort into, whereas a lot of these other club owners, they're like, time and effort. I don't want to do that. I could
Right.
just book this popular person and pay him a lot of money, and then the club is full.
Yeah. There's very few clubs around the country where the audience or the market trusts the club that much. They're like, what's going on Friday night? Let's go to the club. It'll be good. I started in a club like that where a Wednesday open mic would generate a crowd. A Thursday off night, a Sunday night off night of a road comic would generate a crowd because people trusted the club and they said like, well, whatever show they're having, it'll be good. Let's go. And the kitchen happened to be good enough. They had a good enough menu and it all worked. I would be interested to see, what club owners, how they developed that and how they sort of made that decision to go one way or another. But the interesting thing is the club you mentioned, the club I'm talking about, are A clubs, like big names come through there. So both ends of the spectrum work, but it is a hard business.
Well, and you would think too, or this is the way I thought, like, okay, I'm going to go into your comedy club at like the bottom level price. And then over the years, you show me some loyalty and keep booking me. And then if I skyrocket in popularity, I will come back and work your club and I won't completely try to rip you off because you've been so nice to me over the years. But I think the comedy clubs were perhaps too nice to too many people. And then there were too many, too many great comics out there that didn't make it big, and the clubs never got their payback on. But when you were big, you were supposed to come back, and I was supposed to this was supposed to pay off for me. And I think a lot of clubs didn't get their payoff. And so they were like, rather than investing in people for like 10, 20 years, I'm just going to book this person who's real popular, who's never played here before.
Yeah. It's funny how this game really never ends.
Yeah.
This is a continual effort to book a room, to make more money than you're spending.
And there's a very famous comedy club, and I won't mention it by name, but it recently changed hands. And the guy who owned it was actually telling somebody when he was leaving the business, he was like, yeah, the business used to be so great. Like in the 80s, I would just open the doors and people would flood in and it was amazing. But now I don't even know how to get an audience in there.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually said that. And I was like, but that's your job. That's literally the whole job, is to get your business to attract clientele. Mm-hmm. And now you're leaving the business because you don't want to do your job. That's all you're saying right now. When the job was nothing and I could just make money hand over fist, it was so great. But now
when I didn't know work, that's what I like the most.
Now I have to be inventive. Now I have to advertise. I don't know how to do any of this stuff.
So I'm going to Facebook group.
Yeah. So some of these club owners, you spend like 10, 12 years trying to get into that comedy club. And then sometimes that club owner dies. Okay. Well, that was time well spent. That club is closed now.
People forget how many comics have suffered from ownership just passing away.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it's finally on his good side. Damn it. He's dead.
Well, and you hope to have that goodwill kind of scenario where you're like, all right, I'm going to go into this club and work for the lowest level headliner rate. And then maybe I'll do it 2-3 times. And then, we can ask for a raise. And then after like 2 times, the person dies and you're like, okay, well, I should have played my cards a little faster, I guess. I guess I should have asked for a raise before I got there the first time. I don't even know.
It is truly the blue collar job of entertainment is stand-up comedy. You're constantly sort of hammering away. We've all had the story where you finally get in good with a club. And then I'm like, oh, I'm good. The booker said to send dates, and all right, I can finally start getting in with this club. Next day, oh, that booker doesn't work here anymore. Like, what? Right. Go to the back of the line all over again.
Right. Yeah. And it's so frustrating. And people who sit in the audience and watch stand-up, they have no idea how the comics get selected to get on the stage.
Right.
They literally have no idea, but they're pissed anytime it's a comic they don't like.
Right. If you were to equate it to a visual, the audience would be watching a puppet show, yet in the back, you would see about 1 million hands working the puppets. And so much went into actually getting those puppets on there where, the audience is there for the show as they should. Yet so much went to just make it to that door.
Yeah. And what's kind of a strange element as far as stand-up goes is with everything else, whether it's music or painting or whatever it may be, what they teach you in school is like, well, here's all the work that went into this. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you realize how much work went into this painting, now you can appreciate it on a deeper level. And so if the audience were ever clued into how much work went into it and all the details of what that work is, they would be far more appreciative of kind of what's happening there. But they don't want to know. And they don't think they need
Yeah.
to know because they're like, nah, if it's funny, I'll laugh. And if it's not funny, I won't laugh because I'm a comedy genius. I'll
Everybody
decide.
wants to eat steak, Ryan. No one wants to kill the cow. Thank you.
I'll decide if the comedian's funny, and then that'll be the end of the discussion.
I have as good of a sense of humor as the next guy. Let me tell you, I'll decide what's what. I know what's funny.
And they've never been taught otherwise.
People tell me I'm funny.
Yeah.
You get
right.
That's a common one.
And I always go, no, your friends tell you you're funny. The people who already like you think you're funny. Strangers might not think you're funny.
I think, yeah, you hit it on the head. I have this thought too, where I think like, okay, once people get to know me, like my friends and stuff, I'm funny and charming with them. Okay, now I need to get the audience to know me. 7 years later, you're still working on the same thing. But I think that's the mindset that we all start off with. Like, all right, once they get to know me, then I think my sense of humor will come out. It's very hard to be likable and endearing and relatable from the get-go. I think that's what we're all striving for, is for our perspective to be relatable.
Well, I think there's a little too much weight put on our shoulders as well. Because like, if we go back to that idea that the audience is going to see somebody that they already like for a reason that isn't stand-up, mm-hmm. That's kind of the other side of the coin, which is if the audience already likes you, the job is infinitely easier. But if we don't have an audience, we put that on our shoulders like it's somehow like talent can overcome that. And there's no level of talent that overcomes somebody going, yeah, but I like you.
Yeah.
You can actually like break down why a certain comedian is doing something that's hacky or stolen or just bad on stage. And their fans, that comedian's fans, will go, yeah, but I liked it. And so
definitely numerous examples of that. You're right.
So we're up against this strange thing where if the audience doesn't like us, it's on our shoulders. Meanwhile, the people they like are the people they never even saw do stand-up before.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, when you're fun and funny around your friends, that's because your friends like you and are going to forgive you for whatever you might say. Mm-hmm. And that level of forgiveness, I mean, that is precious.
Right.
Then you can do whatever you want on stage because you're like, no, the audience will forgive me.
That's a good point. Yeah, I never thought of that. I need to get to a state where the audience will forgive me for all of this.
Yeah.
No one ever puts it in that sort of angle.
Well, and by the way, that's the double-edged sword, is once the audience forgives you for anything, well, now you have no reason to be any good.
Right. Yeah. Then you're starting to coast.
Yeah.
And you're starting
the very idea, like the beauty for me is if you really are a complete stranger, these people do not know you, they've never heard of you, and you get on stage and you give a show and then you get a standing ovation. That's, I mean, there's nothing parallel to that. Like,
definitely.
That is proof beyond proof that what you created was hilarious. Mm-hmm. The problem is that's happened to me before, and those people did not leave and tell their friends. Instead, they just walked up to me and said, that was so good. We can't wait to be able to tell people that we knew you when. I'm like, what? Why don't
you can tell them now.
Why?
You got a phone? I'll text them for you right now.
Tell them to come to the show tomorrow. But they actually believe they're going to go home and watch television 10 years from now and be like, oh, that guy, we remember him, and then feel good about themselves. And it's like, that's not how this works at all. Freaking buy a CD, tell somebody about me. Like, do something to help my career. Don't just go
roll down your window in the car on the way home.
Yeah. That's the other struggle is a lot of comics, we don't know what we want out of the audience. The audience doesn't know what they want out of us. And a lot of people just think, well, if I laugh, then it's over and it's good.
Yeah. Question for you. I always look at you as, if I'm the lower class, you're an upperclassman. So I sort of look at like what you're doing, shows you're on, your progress. So shows are starting up again, at least here on the West Coast. So people are getting up on stage. For you, getting back up on stage and performing, how is it for you? How is the performance different? How is your writing different? How is your mentality different on stage this first month that we're back up?
So, I mean, I made a very conscious choice during lockdown that I was not going to be doing any Zoom shows. I made a conscious choice that I was not going to be running around to outdoor shows, sharing microphones with comedians. I wasn't going to be doing any of that.
How come? What was the decision in that process? Why did you go that route?
Well, I didn't see the connection between doing stand up over Zoom and doing stand up as we know it. Like those are two completely different things for me. That's like if, asking Da Vinci, like, but why didn't you get into like graffiti?
Why aren't you doing any Etch-a-Sketch, Da Vinci?
That's not really how I work.
I see.
That was one. But then as far as doing like live shows outdoors, I've never liked outdoor shows, but also just the safety component. I was more interested in the idea that, authors will write a book and then they won't write another book for 3-4 years. Painters will paint and then they'll put down the brush for 2-3 years. Like that's how other creators create. And so I was like, hey, this is a really nice opportunity to just take a step back and reevaluate.
Yeah.
And I can come back later. And when I came back, it was with some ideas that had just like come up during lockdown, but it was also a level of like, I'm very curious to see, how the audience is after being locked down. I'm very curious to see, how much my brain is going to snap back into comedy mode. I'm very curious to see just like about all of this as far as like starting over. I knew the death trap would be to come back and immediately start doing really old jokes that I know are successful from my old albums and then kill. Like that was going to be the worst thing anybody could do. And plenty of comics are doing it. Plenty of comics are so desperate to like just get on stage and kill because it's been so long. And I think it's again that idea of just be curious and get up and try things and try to look at what worked and what didn't work, and you go, all right,
yeah,
well, that was there were some lessons learned. Great.
Yeah. And how has it been? What has been your critique of your own performances and the overall feel of being in front of an audience again?
So the performance has been a lot friendlier from my side. I used to really kind of go up and throw down the gauntlet and challenge the audience immediately. And now it's a lot more welcoming. It's a lot more inviting because I know that, look, they haven't been outside in a long time. They have a lot of choices of what they could do. The very fact that they came to see stand-up comedy means, wow, you and I have something in common. I really like you. So that kind of put me in a different mindset. And I found that the audiences initially were really excited to be out, and slowly they're turning back into their old selves. They're getting way too drunk at the late shows. People are starting to heckle.
Right.
People are not figuring out what the rules are. And, we live in such a divided culture right now that, I mean, my biggest concern is just, if people are being violent at the grocery store, people are going to be violent at the comedy club. And so I'm hyper aware of that. And things can escalate to violence really quickly as of the last like 2-3 years.
Right.
So, that's kind of kicking around in my head too.
What do you mean when you say you challenge the audience? Is that a conscious thing? Was that always in your stand-up, or did that develop?
Yeah. I mean,
later into it?
it first kind of came out of this place of, I always really liked jokes that were logically correct, like that they had, a sense of logic to them, but they would make people like groan and feel bad. And so when it's right, but then it feels wrong in your heart, like I was always interested in that dynamic. And people always called it like dark humor or mean humor. There's a clip on YouTube where I'm on stage talking very logically about suicide and, making logical points, and the audience is laughing, but could people feel their way through that and feel offended? Of course they could. But so that kind of conflict was already in my head. So it was just kind of putting it in people's faces. Like, I'm going to say things, you're going to moan, and then I'm going to yell at you for moaning because I'm not lying. The words coming out of my mouth are true. So what's the problem here? Fuck you.
It's the title of Ryan's new comedy special. What's the problem? Fuck you.
Yeah. And the other is the idea that we've kind of been talking about, which is if audiences are just going to stand-up comedy to see celebrities, if that's the main reason they buy a ticket, well, I know that's not why they came to see me. So I'm just going to tell the audience, like, well, look, then I don't know what you want from me. Because some of you are going to love political material. Some of you are going to hate political material. Some of you want goofy faces and dumb puns. Some of you are going to hate dumb puns. So what the fuck are we supposed to do here, everybody? You don't even know what we're supposed to do here. And so there was like a little bit of, I don't know, almost resentment there that I would voice on stage. And I did it well enough that the audience was like, yeah, he's kind of right. He's actually very right.
What's the drive in there in doing that material? Is it the interest in the words and the logic and the stand-up? Is it anger? Is it you mentioned resentment? Where do you think it comes from?
It is a little bit of frustration of like going through the business and realizing like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Like I thought stand-up comedy, I was going to be able to get on stage and perform for a lot of people who loved stand-up as much as I did. I thought I was going to be performing for people who had their own comedy album collections. I thought it was going to be performing for people who could actually like recite old bits from old HBO specials. And it turns out you're performing for people who they literally don't know the difference between stand-up comedy and an actor on The Big Bang Theory. Like, I don't know if you've ever been like in an Uber or a cab and they ask you, what do you do for a living? And you go, oh, I'm a comedian. I'm a stand-up comic. I'm doing shows this weekend. And they say things like, oh, I love comedy. I like that. Did you ever see Anchorman?
Right. Do you know Tom Arnold?
Yeah, it's not even close to the same thing.
Right.
And they don't even know that. So once that became so apparent to me, that the audience gets to decide what is or isn't funny, and they have no credentials to do that. I got pretty frustrated with it.
Is there any?
And so my second album is called How to Be an Audience because it's really laying out those frustrations.
Is there any perspective in the sense that this is out of our control? That there's no way we'll never get the audience we truly want? Or is this just a frustration that you've channeled into writing, into performance, and you've essentially used it creatively?
I think it's a little bit of both, but certainly I mentioned earlier that the desire to do stand-up and not other comedy was a control issue. And then
we've come back to the control issue,
and then realizing like, oh, I don't have any control here on the thing where I talk alone. I don't even have control here. Very frustrating. Reminds me of being 8 years old at the public school going,
first
really?
day of public school.
Have any, this is just pandemonium. Are you serious right now?
We're not forming a line to the soda machine. This is a free for all.
Why is this happening? Yeah. It's a lot of the same frustrations. And I've even told audiences like, I'm going to yell at you tonight. And the message I'm going to be yelling at you is, what do you want from me? And I'm not even yelling at you. I'm yelling at my father. So let's all just relax.
You beat me to my next question, Ryan.
Yeah.
Does this control thing affect, is it present in other parts of your life? Is it hard to get through certain things with that you don't have control over in your normal life?
Um, I, I think so. There's a little bit of apathy. Like if I don't actually have some deep seated passion about something and I can't control it, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like if I go to the bank and the line is super long, I don't go, I just think, oh, I don't control the line of the bank. This is fine.
Hmm.
um,
So that you're okay with that.
there's all sorts of things that I'm okay with. Certainly traffic in Los Angeles is very frustrating though.
Mhm.
Because you think, I'm in the car, I control the car, I get to go places. And the
Yeah.
other drivers are like, no, I'm going to make a left, but I'm going to not be in the turn lane. I'm going to hang out with half my ass in this lane and you
Right.
can't go around me. So deal with that. People
That's
on
right.
crosswalks just walking across, even though I've got the green light. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
really? You're just going to stop everybody in Los Angeles from driving because you feel like walking now?
Yeah.
Like when it's egregious like that, it does set me off pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. I always like when someone's crossing the crosswalk and they see you waiting and they give you the half-ass jog. They put their wrists up to their chest. That's my only hope for humanity. It was like, all right, okay, there was the smallest amount of effort. So at least there was at least there was an effort. They actually went slower than walking, but
I just wanted, the recognition. You acknowledge that there are people waiting.
Yes.
And now you're okay.
Just a little hustle. Just give me a little hustle and I can go on with my day thinking humanity is at least at 0-0.
Yeah.
I can go with that. How about this? This question popped in my head and it's starting to make a little sense. You talked about, you want the audience to be challenged. You want control over the material. You want the performance to be your own. The suit. You always wear a suit on stage. Where did that come from? Is that a conscious decision? Is that an old school show business look? Do you just feel more comfortable in the suit and tie?
It came from a few places. Number one, I really didn't want to have to think about what I was going to wear on stage. I didn't want to have to put any like real thought into it.
But why the suit? I would think that would mean t-shirt and jeans, but you went suit.
I think there's a level of, you say jeans, but jeans, they're jeans, they come in and out of style, and I don't want to be a fashionista on stage being like, look, I have the proper jeans. I have the proper cut jeans and the proper fade. Like I have what's hip right now. Or, oh, I have the wrong jeans. So now I'm sending a message to you that I don't know anything about fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't want to have to play that game ever. I literally looked at the suit and tie like, oh, that's always worked. I bet that's always going to work. I'm just going to go with that.
I see.
And it actually turned out to be a really great choice because like on the road, when I'm doing, 6-7 shows at a comedy club at 5:30, I take a shower, I get out, I start ironing a shirt. I iron my shirt, I get dressed, get nice and put together. And that whole time from 5:30 until I arrive at the club, I'm thinking about my act. I'm going to work. And this is a habit and it's a repetition. So the next night when I'm 5:30, I'm in the shower, I'm shaving my face, I'm ironing a shirt, like, there's something about your brain that understands like, oh, we're going to go do this thing again. Oh, we should start thinking about that. People always ask me like, how do you come up with so many callbacks in your act? And I'm like, well, I'm thinking about the act constantly. Versus there are plenty of comics on the road who will literally play video games until 7:30. And then they'll be like, oh, damn, I got to get to the show.
Right.
And then they go to the show, they walk into the club, they order a beer and a shot, and they immediately, soak their brain with a little booze. And they haven't thought about their act since the last time they got off stage. And so, of course, the act hasn't grown at all for them. It's the same as it always was. But for me, just putting that mental effort in while I'm, while I'm ironing a shirt, I think changed the game for me.
Yeah. It seems like it's your ritual. You're like a boxer getting his hands taped.
Yeah.
You go through the process before the fight ever starts.
It really helped me focus. And by the way, since the pandemic ended, since lockdown ended, I haven't been wearing a suit on stage.
That was my next question. I've seen you on stage and you don't have the suit.
Yeah.
What's going on there? Why the change? Are you easing back into it? Or are you introducing another look to your performance?
Again, I'm not sure. I just know that comedy didn't happen for like a year. And it would be very strange to come back and do exactly what I was doing before.
Mm.
So I just wanted to come back, wear tennis shoes on stage, wear jeans. Let's just feel this out. Let's just see
Yeah.
what this is like. Plus, I haven't seen anybody wearing a suit and tie since lockdown ended. I haven't seen a single person in a suit and tie since we were set free.
Got it. Right.
And even like, culturally, we have to consider like over the last 3-4 years, the whole image of the suit and tie, like that's what tech bros wear when they have to testify in front of Congress. That's what you put on when you're in trouble.
Oh yeah, right.
It's no longer a status symbol. It's no longer a symbol of power. That is, okay, I'm here to make my apologies now. And so once the culture shifted that way, I was kind of like, yeah, I don't want to send the message that I'm here to apologize.
Yeah. You're like the Cleveland Browns in the preseason where they don't put the stripe on the helmet yet. They wait till the season starts. They're like, we're not doing this till it's for real, everybody. You got to earn the stripe. You're earning the suit. You're so right with the clothing as far as comfort goes. It drives me nuts with the clothing when someone wears a t-shirt with words on it or a saying on it.
Yeah.
And I think like all the audience is doing is reading that saying and saying, what's that about? Why did you wear that shirt?
Yeah.
Is that that's pretty funny. I was like, they're not listening to your words. They're reading your clothes.
Yeah.
Or the chick who wears like the super like cool high boots. Like, don't wear those boots. Everybody's looking at your boots. To wear something normal, you need to be an empty jar. And your words and your material is filling the jar as you go along. Don't have anything going on over here to distract the audience. It drives me nuts with when you can tell they've made an effort with the clothes, but it's the wrong direction. You're like, why are you wearing so many bracelets?
And I would agree with you if it weren't for the simple detail that we've discussed, which is, the woman with the boots gets on stage and then there are all sorts of people in the audience going, oh, I like her boots, so I like her. This should be fun. And you go, really? That's all you needed? You needed a pair of boots on stage to like.
Who's your favorite comic? The chick with the boots?
Yeah. And people do it. Like they see how somebody's dressed and they go, oh, that person dresses like me. I like this.
Yeah.
The number of comics who get up and talk about like, so I smoke a lot of weed, and then people in the audience clap and like woo, and you're like, really, everybody? This is what you're connecting with?
Weed should be legal, right, guys? That was always an instant 5-second applause.
Yeah.
Break.
And
nowadays the one is like, we're back, everybody. Make some noise for being back. That's the new keep it going for the troops. You say that and you just got 5 seconds of applause while you think of the first thing you should say. It's become the new keep it going for the troops. Keep it going for the single moms.
Yeah.
I got one more question for you before I play the game. I was doing some research on you. I was reviewing your 2011 Conan set. I was noticing since Conan did his final show, everybody who's been on Conan. So I watched yours. Can you take me through what that day is like doing a late night spot for television? What time do you get there? How does it go?
So, what's kind of nice is they schedule a limo service to pick you up at home. It's a town car. It's not exactly a limo, but I invited two of my friends to come with me. So we piled into the back of this thing and we arrived at the studio probably at about, I want to say 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I was there for about 45 minutes. They put me in makeup. They steamed my suit. They polished my shoes. And then I got dressed. I was ready. They mic'd me up. And then they went, hey, Gordon Ramsay isn't here yet, so we're going to hold. He was the first guest that night. And he was late. He was late. And so we waited. And we waited some more. And we kept waiting. And then so finally, I think we got started like an hour and a half late or something like that. And the whole time I'm just waiting. And thank God that I'd had so many years of, at that point I had like a decade of stand-up under my belt. So I was able to, you can wait. Jerry Seinfeld says that in the comedian documentary. He was like, yeah, this is the job. They're,
Mhm.
they're holding the show. So you just wait.
Yeah.
Um, and so, finally Gordon Ramsay got there. They start the taping. I watched the monologue. My friends and I are hanging out in a green room. And then, the second guest is on, Hayden Panettiere, and I'm going to makeup, and they're just doing some last looks. And then Conan throws to commercial, and he says, "When we come back, comedian Ryan Stout." And they go to commercial, and then you're just you're put in position behind the curtain, and you stand there and you wait. And then Conan introduces me. The guys open up the curtain. I walk through the curtain, and I start. And and it's so funny because Bobby Lee and I, when we would do Chelsea Lately, we would talk about the fact that we're just sitting backstage waiting. And that was nobody would have ever believed that it's so not glamorous.
Right.
They think it's celebrities backstage, like having
Of course.
drinks and like having laughs. And we're all just sitting there just going, all right.
Yeah. Back to the puppet show with, all the backstage stuff that's going on.
Whenever they want me to work, I guess I'll work. There we go. So that's, that was kind of the whole thing.
What were you like? Were you nervous? Were you anxious to get out there? Were you keyed in on the audience? What was your mindset?
So I think I had an advantage too, just because it had been, I had so much experience under my belt. And I had already spoken with, people like Dana Gould, and I asked Dana, what I should do, and if he had any advice. And Dana's advice was interesting. He was like, so that whole audience is there because they love Conan, and they would hate for you to bomb on Conan. But because they would hate that, they're very nervous on your behalf. Like they would control that situation. They could easily just laugh their heads off at you, but at the same time, they won't. And so Dana was like, chances are your first joke is going to bomb, and it's your job to just segue into the next joke and be confident and let the audience go, oh, it's going to be fine. And sure enough, I went out there. I expected my first joke to just completely bomb. And I will say the very first punchline didn't get as big a pop as I thought it would. But also because of Dana, I was expecting it to be a little muted. Mm-hmm. And so when it didn't hit so hard, I just continued on to the next tag and the next tag and the next tag. And by the time I was done with that first joke, I had a nice applause break. And I actually look over at my shoulder at Conan just to check in, just to be like, see, we're doing good. We're already clapping. And so at that moment, I had a nice sense of relief, because I was like, yeah, this is going to go fine. This is going to go fine. I knew exactly what to expect. And it happened.
You broke it down perfectly, because I watched the set, and you're totally right. Your second joke gets the big laugh, the one about adopting a kid for 47 cents a month. Yeah. That's the one that keys up. And then even the setup starts to build a little bit. And then you get to the punch, which is really, really dry. And the audience is all on board for it. And then you're rolling. You're totally right. That first one doesn't get the big one. It's the second one. Yeah. And also from Dana Gould's perspective, how about a great piece of advice? Have you ever gotten comedy advice that actually rung true? Never. Yet that one is so poignant. You always get the advice like, be loose, pause, feel the audience. So like, you can never do that in real time.
Sure.
But and for Dana Gould to say,
and it wasn't even late night specific. It was Conan specific. Because it wasn't like he was saying, oh, with the Tonight Show or with Letterman. He was saying with Conan, they love Conan so much that they're nervous for you. Whereas the Tonight Show, probably a completely different vibe. They're tourists. They're at the Tonight Show. They're very excited. They really want you to do well. They're just there to scream and clap when they're told. The warm-up guy is going to tell them to clap. You're going to kill. But yeah, Dana Gould with the very Conan specific advice was great.
Wow. Amazing. And what's the feeling like when you finish that set and walk off the stage?
I honestly felt like I couldn't have done better. And I walked off stage, and the booker, JP Buck, he's looking at his watch. He was like, you did 5 minutes exactly. He was like, you could have done like 5:15, 5:30. And I was like, really? I submitted this material to you. We ran it through the lawyers. We rehearsed it. We practiced it. We put it on tape several times. I'm not going to stray from the script at this point. You wanted 5 minutes out of me. I gave you 5 minutes. We're done.
classic Booker undermining your confidence statement post show.
I mean, he was being very
yeah, he meant it as a compliment. It sounds like,
Stout, you're doing so good. You could have riffed some. No, I could not have, sir.
Why'd you go short? That's hilarious.
The other good piece of advice was JP Buck gave me probably the best piece of late night advice, which again, I would never have considered, which is, the people in the audience, and this goes back to my childhood, the people in the audience don't know there's going to be a comedian on the show. These people are here because they love Conan. You could be a band, you could be a juggler. These people in the audience are not here to see stand-up. Mm-hmm. And as soon as he told me that, I went, oh, so I should treat this more like
the third grade.
Well, I should treat it like television. You know, when you do television, you just go out and you're friendly. Just be friendly. And that's all you do. And fortunately, I had, enough experience with like MTV and whatnot that I could go out there and just be friendly.
Yeah. You knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
You could have done, Ryan, you could have riffed. You could have went to 5:15.
Could have riffed. Yeah. It would have been great.
Well, I have for you, I always end every show with the head-to-head Rotten Tomatoes game.
Okay.
And I'll explain to you how it works. I have a practice one for you too, so you can get into the groove of it all. Basically, I'm going to read you a description of a movie. When you think you know the movie, shout it out. You can get a point from that.
Okay.
And then secondly, you will have two movies and they'll go head to head and you have to guess which one has the higher Rotten Tomatoes score. So you can get a point from shouting out the movie from the description and then picking the higher Rotten Tomatoes score. And especially for you, Ryan Stout, these are movies that are either set in El Paso or mention El Paso or have an El Paso reference in them.
Okay, great.
So here we go. Practice round. Don't feel any pressure. Description. Shout it out when you know. In the near future, a weary hero comes from cares for his mentor at a remote outpost on the Mexican border. His plan to hide from the outside world gets upended when he meets a young girl very much like him. He must now protect the girl and battle the dark forces that want to capture her.
My Christ. I can't even imagine what movie that is. The dark forces that want to capture, like when I think of El Paso and I think of dark forces, all I think is the movie Manos, Hands of Fate.
Oh, good. Yeah. Good reference.
Yeah. So that's that. I mean, that would have been my guess.
The movie is from 2017, Logan. The very opening scene is in El Paso. They even have like a little freeway sign in the background. Huh. Yeah. I didn't know that either. When researching, I was like, Logan has the opening scene.
Wow.
All right, here's your second movie description.
His mentor, of course, Professor X, and then
correct. Yep, the mentor was Professor X.
Sure. That was the practice round.
We're in the practice round. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Practice round. This is just to loosen up. This is you're not in the suit yet. You're still in your polo shirt. Second description. 2 years before the Civil War, a slave finds himself accompanying an unorthodox German bounty hunter. The two hunt the South's most wanted criminals. Their travels take them to an infamous plantation owner where one finds his long-lost wife.
Oh, this was the Tarantino film. Leonardo DiCaprio and Jamie Foxx.
Come on, Ryan. You're right there. Come on.
Yep. It's Django Unchained.
You got it. From 2012. The movie is Django Unchained. The El Paso scene is Christoph Waltz kills the El Paso sheriff, who is really the outlaw. So your movies are Logan versus Django Unchained. Which one do you think has the higher Rotten Tomatoes score for your practice round?
Man, because there are so many comic book nerds who would have loved Logan, who would also go on the internet and vote, I would lean toward that, but I also know those comic book nerds are very, very particular. So they would get upset if anything in the movie were away from canon. And Django Unchained, of course, was a celebrated film. So I'm going to say Django Unchained has the higher score.
Okay. Logan is 93%. Django Unchained, 87%. Practice round. Don't worry about that. Practice round. I like where your head was at. You're thinking like a critic as opposed to a fan. Okay, here's the real deal though, Ryan. Here we go. These are El Paso movies or movies with an El Paso theme or mention. Movie number 1, shout it out when you know it. When an asteroid threatens to collide with Earth, NASA decides the only way to stop it is to drill into the surface and detonate a nuclear bomb. Renowned driller. Go ahead. Did you have something?
Is it Armageddon?
From 1998. It's Armageddon. You're on the board, Ryan. Yeah. On the board. 1 point. All right. The El Paso reference is Owen Wilson owns a horse ranch outside of El Paso.
Wow.
In that movie.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. Good El Paso reference on there. Finally, an El Paso reference that isn't like based off of crime and stuff.
Yeah.
Second movie description. A climatologist is ignored by UN officials when presenting his environmental concerns. His research proves true when a massive storm develops, setting off natural disasters around the globe. Trying to get to his trapped son, the climatologist must travel by foot from Philadelphia to New York.
New York. Yeah.
What do you got?
It's like the day before tomorrow or something like that. I can't remember. Yeah, I mean, I remember watching the movie. I remember the snow. I remember the wolves. And I always see the title and I always go, why can't I remember that title? So what is it?
Give me your guess. I'm going to have to go to the judges.
All I can remember is the day after tomorrow or the day before.
You got
tomorrow.
It from 2004. The movie is The Day After Tomorrow.
Boom.
The El Paso scene is when the climate change, they do a border shot of the Rio Grande and Americans are crossing into Mexico.
Brilliant.
It's a very funny, ironic twist. So your movies are Armageddon versus The Day After Tomorrow. Which one has the higher Rotten Tomatoes score? You ace the description on both. Let's see if you can get the Rotten Tomatoes one.
I'm going to go Armageddon. Armageddon's got the highest score because I don't know. I just think, I think audiences would gravitate toward that because it just had one big problem versus, you've got heat here, you've got snow there, you've got.
I like that you think it only had one big problem.
Well, I mean, as far as what was threatening the Earth, one big problem.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like it would have been easier for audiences to gravitate toward. Plus, Liv Tyler was in that one, right?
Liv Tyler, Ben Affleck. We had a lot of heavy hitters.
Aerosmith had a big hit.
This was like maybe height of MTV music soundtracks as well as movies.
Yeah. So I'm going to go Armageddon has the higher score.
Okay. The choice is Armageddon. Armageddon is rotten at 38%.
Uh-huh.
The Day After Tomorrow is rotten at 45%. So you got the descriptions, not the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. You're still on the board with 2 points. Here we go. Next movie. El Paso theme movies.
So I guess both of those.
You got the two descriptions. So you're at 2 points.
But was that our first round? That wasn't our first round.
That was the first round.
Okay.
The first one was the practice.
Django Unchained and Logan. Okay. Yeah.
Correct.
All right. 2 points.
All right. Here we go. The suit is now on. So we're in the real deal now. Description. A contemporary thriller set in the world of drug smuggling, high stakes, high risks of the drug trade are seen through a series of interrelated events, some highly personal and some of which are filled with intrigue and danger.
Sicario.
The movie is from 2000, Traffic.
Oh.
Not a bad guess, though. Very similar.
Okay. Yep.
The El Paso scene is Michael Douglas visits El Paso's drug enforcement headquarters.
Yeah.
About halfway through the movie. I rewatched this movie. It's really good. It starts off and you're like, there's no way they can bring this home. There's too much going on everywhere. And yet, excellent movie. I really enjoyed it.
Traffic. Soderbergh, right?
Soderbergh, correct. Yeah.
Mm.
You watch it a couple times, you're like, oh, okay, I see it now. I see the Soderbergh. Movie number 2 description. Yell it out when you know. A reporter is assigned to decipher a newspaper magnate's dying words. His investigation reveals a fascinating portrait of a complete man who rose from obscurity to staggering heights. The reporter finds shreds of information from colleagues, even a former mistress, but fears he may never penetrate the mystery of the man's dying final word.
Citizen Kane.
From 1941, Citizen Kane is the movie. You got it, Ryan.
What's the El Paso reference?
Good question. In the early portion of the movie, there is a newspaper headline titled The El Paso Journal, and it reads the headline, "N comes for Charles Foster Kane."
Okay.
Yeah, I had no idea. I had to look that one up far and wide, but yeah,
Okay.
El Paso Journal is featured in that movie. So your movies are Traffic versus Citizen Kane. Higher Rotten Tomato score.
Well, listen. Everything in me says that Citizen Kane would be rated higher. But
Okay.
I worry that that's the trick of this.
Ooh,
I almost worry that it's a trick question. That
right. Okay.
but you know what? Let's go with our instinct and say, it's a beloved film. It's a classic. So Citizen Kane.
Traffic is fresh at 92%. Citizen Kane is fresh at 99%. You went with your gut and you were right, Ryan.
Yeah.
You were right. You're at 4 points. You're threatening for the all-time record here, which is 6. Okay, last round. Here we go. The suit is on. The tie is brought up to the neck. The shoes are shined.
Yep.
Last round. Your movie description. While out hunting, a man finds the grisly aftermath of a drug deal. He can't resist the cash left behind and takes it with him. The hunter becomes the hunted when a merciless killer picks up on his trail. An aging lawman also investigates, and in doing so reflects on a changing world and a dark secret of his own.
Yep. No Country for Old Men.
From 2007, the movie is No Country for Old Men. You got it.
No Country for Old Men. Anton Chigurh. And I remember it was the El Paso reference is the, isn't it the old woman? She was like, you know how many people I know in El Paso?
Yep.
That many. That's how many I know in El Paso.
That's right. That's right. The El Paso. Josh Brolin goes to hide out in El Paso and stays at the Desert Sands Motel.
Yeah.
So you got that one. Second and final movie description. A former assassin wakes up from a coma 4 years after her jealous ex-lover attempts to murder her on her wedding day. Fueled by revenge, she vows to... You got it. From 2003, Kill Bill is the movie. The El Paso scene is the Two Pines Wedding Chapel Massacre is set in El Paso, our hometown.
So I'm at 6 points. That's the all-time record.
You are tied with the record from the infamous Sean Leary, who got 6. However, you can break it. Comes down to this. That's right. Okay. Your movies are, for the record, No Country for Old Men versus Kill Bill. Take me through your thought process.
All right. So Kill Bill, number 1, 2 movies. It's 2 movies. So correct. I don't know if Rotten Tomatoes would break them up for the voting, but Tarantino certainly has his fans and he has his detractors. No Country for Old Men, I believe, was up for an Academy Award. I liked it. I know my dad liked it.
It's a very, very likable dad movie. You're right. My dad loves it.
Yeah. And, there are a lot of just classic things about it that I feel like it would just endure longer than Kill Bill. Like Kill Bill is kind of a niche genre movie. So I'm going to say No Country for Old Men.
Going No Country for Old Men, final answer?
It's final answer.
No Country for Old Men is fresh at 93%. Kill Bill Volume 1 is fresh at 85%. We have a new leader in the clubhouse, Ryan Stout. How about this?
I'm so
7
thrilled.
points.
I'm
Wow.
so thrilled. I can't believe it. I didn't think I would do well at the game.
Did you only miss one? Am I
I'm the
right?
best at the game.
That's right. That's right. Shine those shoes.
Yeah. Thank you. No, that's going to make my whole night.
Very nice. We have a new leader. We talked about going to a public school in the 3rd grade. We talked about the future of stand-up comedy. We talked about your Conan experience. What a summary.
What a summary. And by the way, I feel like you should just clip the game part off and put it up on the internet.
Just the game, huh?
Just the game. I just think people would be thrilled to see my victory.
I don't know if you have a sizzle reel already in line for yourself, Ryan, but maybe we go just the Rotten Tomatoes game with Ryan Stout.
Yeah, that'd be, it's just me. It's like, what was that show? 21, the
24
quiz show story. Remember the
21
quiz show? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm just I'm the reigning champion and we just quiz me every time.
Retire from everything right now. You're the champion. I need a belt.
Crazy.
I need a championship belt for this game. Well, you did it. Well, Ryan Stout, thank you for talking to me, man. Thank you for catching up.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your
adrenaline's
insights.
Through the roof. I've
I've
never finished a podcast so well.
That's why I'm saying retire from everything. I'll shut the lights off right now.
I'm going to guess movies, everybody. So long.
Thank you, Ryan. I hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate it.
Okay, that is the show for this week, everybody. Running it back. I want to thank Ryan Stout for joining me. I want to thank Ryan Stout for really setting the bar on the Rotten Tomatoes head-to-head game. This is going to be tough to beat. I'm going to have to let some people know that they are no longer the leader in the Rotten Tomatoes game. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know if someone's going to come to my door, burn my house down over the distraught nature that is losing your title. Don't forget how bad it feels to lose a title. Ryan Stout, you're the new leader of the Rotten Tomatoes head-to-head game. What a round, too. What an interview, too. I'm glad we made it happen. It took a little running around to get him, but we did it. And look what we've learned from it. Everything! Don't forget, July 16th, 7:30, right here in Burbank, California, Flappers Comedy Club. FlappersComedy.com is the site you go to for tickets. Come see me do stand-up, everybody. That's what I do. I don't just yell into a microphone and pester people to do interviews. I actually do stand-up, so come see it. You'll love it. And it's a great club, too. So, for Ryan Stout, for me, Patrick Ramirez, thank you, everybody, for listening. Stay tuned for more shows. I will see you then.